What's up, guys? So, obviously, none of us here want to be abandoned. That is not something that we're seeking in our everyday lives. But I would argue that is something we should seek in video games and in other forms of media. You know, when you think about stuff like having all of your possessions stolen, being kidnapped, having your house burned down, being abandoned, these are things that we do not seek in our everyday lives. We don't want to see them happen to someone else. They're bad things, pretty objectively. But when it comes to video games and other forms of media like this, they can be such a powerful world building, storytelling device, character development device, and they really pack a punch like nothing else can. When you're abandoned in a video game, it really sets you up for success. It's kind of the best way to empower a player. When you're abandoned, you have to figure out how to do the game by yourself, how to become a stronger player. Whether it's something like Dark Souls, abandoning you with any type of real instruction, besides here's how you melee. They kind of abandon you with the world itself. Or whether it's just a game where you're actually abandoned as a character and you have to fend for yourself. You know, think of something like in God of War when Kratos is there and Atreus has to figure something out on his own without Kratos. Those little sections add so much to a game, and they really help tell a story so much better and make you as the player feel more powerful and more connected to the story. I mean, as players, something a lot of us seek out is really a game that makes us earn that game, a game that makes us earn something inside of the game. When I think of a game like Undertale, one of the most popular indie games ever, that game is abandoning us in some way. Like I said, abandonment comes in many forms. It can be mechanically like Dark Souls. It can be emotionally like The Last of Us. It can be something like Metroid Prime, where you are actually just sort of abandoned by your gear and it's just you having to find it all. You know, kind of the premise of a Metroidvania. When it comes to a game like Undertale, it's almost as if the game is causing you to abandon yourself and what you think you know about a video game. What that game is doing is it's not even necessarily abandoning you, it's prompting you to abandon what you know. And that's kind of why it's such a cool game, isn't it? And it's one of my favorite things about video games is how this all ties together and what it is about them that's tripping us out and keeping us so fascinated in them. Undertale, yeah, it's causing us to kind of abandon our morals. Do we want to go on a run where we don't kill anybody? Well, we have that option. So then when we do choose to go on a run where we do kill everyone or kill some people, kill some creatures, whatever you're doing, the fact that you know you have an alternative option where there is a route, a pacifist route where you don't have to kill everyone, it causes you to question a lot of things. And it's sort of, again, causing you to abandon your moral compass, abandon what you knew about a video game. And that's a really cool device, but it all ties into that abandonment element. When it comes down to it, abandonment, the definition of it is leaving someone permanently, abandoning a certain principle, or leaving them without means of support or care. And these games are doing that to us in some sense. I mean, I think the most prominent example of abandonment in a game, I feel like any horror game really ties into this, and it's really how they use that abandonment principle in horror games to really personify what it means to be a horror game. It makes it effective by using that principle. Like, for instance, Resident Evil 1, where you are abandoned in a mansion. You're physically abandoned. Whether it's you're abandoned by not having your equipment, you are sort of on your own. It's a survival situation. Same thing with Resident Evil 2, where you are in the police department and you have to fend for yourself. You make it out of there by your own volition. There's almost no one helping you because the world of that game has left you on your own. It's a really powerful device. I mean, one of the most popular games as well, kind of alongside Undertale, one of the most popular indie style games, Subnautica. You are just in the middle of the ocean. Of course, it's a crash landing. There's no specific person saying, hey, you're going to be alone here. I'm leaving you here. But it's the developers choosing to abandon you by how they made the game. They looked at how the player is going to exist in the game and they said, let's make sure they don't have this particular, asset. Let's make sure they can't do this. Let's make sure they have to go into the creepy water very deep into it before they can earn their way out. They're playing with all of those principles and kind of leaving our minds to go wherever they may. And it's a powerful device. It takes so many forms. Metroidvanias. What we're talking about is a game where you are essentially told by the developers or maybe characters in the game, you don't have anything. You need to go around and become who you're supposed to be. Who you are is not who you are. You know, if you know what I mean. It's such an awesome concept, and the entire premise of Metroidvanias are kind of underlying that principle of you as a player being in a place that you're not familiar with, that you have to explore, that you have to get to know, so that you can get your gear back, so that you can become who you're supposed to be before you were abandoned in some sense, whether it be by the developers, the game, the story, the environment, whatever, you know, particular mechanic it was, whatever device, it's that same principle. And I find it so cool that that entire genre is founded off of that. It's fascinating. I mean, even when you go into the Souls-likes, even that ties with that. Like I was saying, mechanically and story-wise, they choose to kind of plop you into this world and have you figure out. You have to suffer. You're left alone. It's kind of like an analogy I was thinking about. Those games, specifically, kind of Metroidvanias too, are sort of like when you're learning to ride a bike and the training wheels come off and your parent, whoever's teaching you to ride the bike, they're just to your left, they're just to your right. You know, they're still watching you. They're ready to make a save if they need to. At the same time, if you figure it out on your own and you never ask, they're going to let you do that. It's the same thing with the developers of the game and the way they designed Metroidvanias as well. You're swimming in the pool. They're watching you swim and they're ready to save you at any moment, but they're going to watch you struggle quite a bit so you learn. And that's the best way for us as players to feel empowered, is to start out from nothing. And it can't be cheesy either. You know, I just made a video on Skyrim. One of the flaws that I do find with Skyrim, even though I love the game dearly, is that you are the chosen one. You're the Dragonborn. I don't necessarily love the chosen one because if you think about it, this abandonment principle doesn't really exist there at all. Of course, it can exist in certain side quests. Maybe you're drugged and you fall asleep at a party and you wake up and all of your possessions are gone. Yes, that's awesome. Stuff like that's really cool. When you as the character are the chosen one, it takes away that comeback story, that raising yourself up from nothing. Think of something like Fable, where you are poor and you're raising yourself up through the ranks. I mean, that's the entire premise of that story, is climbing that hierarchy. The ultimate example of this, though, is Breath of the Wild. Specifically, the developers of that game, as they had throughout the previous entries in the series as well, let's just put this person, Link, into the game and tell them, you have to figure this out on your own. This world is not going to help you. You'll find a few friends along the way, but this world is wild. You have to figure it all out on your own. It's so powerful. And what it does is it makes us feel even better. It's a more enriching experience for us. And again, it allows us to connect more deeply with the experience because we had to come from nothing. Because we had to learn everything on our own, because that was how they abandoned us and how they left us to search, to find, to conquer, to fail, and then to succeed. And it's just an awesome cycle that they've set us up for in these games where they do this. So many games tell stories in such powerful ways using this device. I can't stop and help but think about the Halo games. Some of my favorite stories in gaming. Halo 1, when you first meet the Flood. If you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. We've all experienced that moment where the Flood rush into the dark room and you're abandoned by the Covenant. It's just you fending them off. And it's like a survival horror situation for a second in Halo. As well as at the end when it's just Master Chief and Cortana floating in space. Or we talk about Halo 3 ODST, where you have the failed drop. And you're just the rookie walking through the town. I can't remember the name of that city now. That is an entire story of just isolation and you figuring yourself out as a rookie when you're so used to being the powerful Master Chief. It's very powerful. Halo reached the ultimate example of this, when it's just you at the end, fighting off hordes and hordes and hordes. You know, though, that the world itself has left you behind, that you are going to die. One of my favorite things about older games too are abandoned concepts, and you can see that in some of the gameplay. For instance, I'm talking about a game like Wind Waker. The abandoned islands, how there's just islands where it seems like there should be something existing there, but there really is nothing there. You know, everyone talks about Wind Waker's missing dungeon. There's all that interesting lore, and all of that can kind of be felt underlying the game. You're sailing around the sea and you see all these islands where it feels like there should be just another thing there. They didn't quite have the time, or for whatever reason they cut it. It's those little things that can be felt rippling throughout a game, and that's not even a player being abandoned. That's the game itself, and that kind of feeding into the tone of the game. These are things that I feel when I'm playing a game, especially if I know about the abandoned concepts. I don't know if you guys feel it too, but I'm curious. Or like everything in the old Pokemon games, when you're talking about how creepy some stuff feels, it comes down to how some stuff just feels abandoned. How certain Pokemon designs feel like they didn't quite get the love that others do. We have Lavender Town, of course. It's all tying into that, and it's all a part of that I'm kind of seeing a central theme through, and it's fascinating. I need to shout out a few games that I have not given the proper time of day to, that I know heavily feature elements like this, and I wish I had, because they would be such a great talking point. Maybe some of you guys have played these and can attest to these. So, The Long Dark, a game where you're essentially abandoned in the woods, and you're fending off bears and wolves, and it's just you and the environment. True abandonment. As well as The Outer Wilds. I know, I have to play that one. That one's on my list. There's just so many examples. I think that Prey does a really great job of this as well. Talking about a game like Dredge, one of my favorite indie games of the past decade, where you're sailing the sea and you end up shipwrecked, and then you just have to kind of explore the area, and you discover kind of the Lovecraftian horror and the deep, dark storylines that await you in the people and under the sea. The first time that I remember being abandoned, and when I remember even noticing this device, was in Oracle of Ages, The Legend of Zelda. When they abandon you on an island and you lose all your gear and you kind of have to collect it back, whether it's through fetch quests, as those games love to do, or whatever it was. I just remember thinking how cool it was and how much more I appreciated my gear. It's the old saying, you never know what you had until it's lost, and abandonment, this whole idea, captures that more than anything else. And it always feels better. I think that most of us would agree. We never agree on anything. But I think that most of us would agree that starting from nothing in a video game almost always feels better than starting from everything. You know, the central question really is why? Why should we be abandoned? Why is this worth our time? Why is this something we should be asking for in our games? To be left alone. It's a question people ask all the time when they ask about people who love Dark Souls. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want a game that just destroys you and doesn't really tell you where to go or what you're doing? Well, it's because it's how we learn about ourselves. It's how we learn how to become better in that game, or what really makes us tick, or why we're struggling with this part of the game. It's because they allowed us to go through a challenge, a trial, with less devices, less tools, less equipment. And, it's a subtle abandonment that kind of leaves us to go through those trial by fire situations. And it's also how we make a game our own. If you ever play a game where you aren't left to dry in some moments, or you aren't challenged in some way, then you aren't really making that game your own. If you imagine a very linear game where you can't possibly do anything differently, where that is all you can do, and you aren't really experiencing anything else that someone else might not, then that is not going to make you feel good. Because one of the best parts about experiencing a game, for me, is wondering how someone else might have solved that, which storyline they might have chosen, how I creatively did that, and how cool that was. In those little moments, I am making that game my own. That game is becoming my own experience, and only I can have that. And what an empowering, cool feeling that is. If a game holds your hand too much, then we all might as well be playing the same game, really. Specifically, to give you some examples, I'm thinking about a few games like Pokemon. like Paper Mario does. The intros, the prologues are way too long. Persona, Horizon, even all these games, you can do your own thing. You can catch different Pokemon. Paper Mario, I do think one thing that it really suffers from is that you can't really make it your own. It's a good example of a great game, but its biggest flaw is that you can't do anything differently really in that game than what someone else might do. You can do the skill tree differently, but it's not really affecting the gameplay like it would in some other games. I think of something like Persona, where it holds your hand for way too long, and once you're free, you're free. You can have interesting relationships, and there's whole other storylines you can constantly miss, and you can get those in a different playthrough. So yes, you can make those different as well. And with Horizon, it takes the fun out of it. It really does. I mean, it's those little moments that really make a game your own, though. They're just so important. It's so important to play a game and feel like you made it an experience that only you could have, you know? So anyways, Abandonment. Kind of crazy, kind of interesting. I got thinking about this because I'm playing Suikoden right now, and it features a really cool, interesting abandonment device where you are sort of abandoned by your father. He's going to war, and then the actual Imperial army that he's fighting for ends up abandoning you as well. I won't get into the details, but it starts kind of a Star Wars Rebel versus Empire style story, and you go from there, and it's all set up by that abandonment device, and it's awesome. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys. It's been fun. Been getting some cool feedback on my videos recently, and just hit the 400 mark, so that's crazy stuff. But I'll catch you guys later.